We are live. All right, Roberto, are you going to do the fancy intro we talked about, or?
Oh, I guess I have to make a random
Also, you missed
intro.
the memo. We're all wearing gray today, so.
Oh, well, I'm wearing gray
I
here,
mean, I
but
guess it doesn't matter for our listeners. They're not going to be able
yeah,
to see that,
no.
but,
I am rocking my creator hoodie today, so the merch.
Beautiful.
The merch. But yeah, no, let's do the fake intro.
Fake intro.
And welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast. And now your host, the woman who is obsessed with watching all of the Star Trek franchise in chronological order, Red Romina. And two-time college dropout and filmmaker. And yes, that is how we're introing her, Audrey Ember. As well as your third host, who considers himself the final boss, Roberto Blake.
What?
The final boss.
The final boss. Yeah, no, that is my off the top of my head horrible intro for everybody.
That was probably the best intro that I've ever heard.
We can do that every time, but just switch the titles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just going to make up things for you guys yeah, or we can script it and make up funny things beforehand, coordinated.
The one thing we plan.
The one thing we plan.
Coordinate the fake intro.
Yes. Yeah. It let me practice more of my improv, like to a point.
Oh my God. Should we explain what we're doing?
Somebody should explain what we're doing, with this
randomness.
I think we'll just we'll let Audrey jump in because it was kind of like you're the one who, I don't know, lit a fire under us.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a theme or anything for this podcast because one thing we were talking about earlier was, do we want this to be a creative podcast? And the answer was no. Basically, it's going to be kind of random. But I think that's how we want it to be, kind of just a loose, whatever we want to talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about creative stuff because
casual.
We're doing that all the time. So
right.
Yeah, it's more just a casual. How long are we doing this for? 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
We're literally just going to upload the audio to the podcast platform. So it's going to be very raw and just, yeah.
In real.
And
there's going to be some ASMR bits as well.
No.
What? What do you mean? Do you think Roberto is talking to us or is he talking? Who do you think he's talking to?
So I just sent out, I didn't realize that I muted my mic so I could type because I just sent out to the Twitterverse.
Oh.
I just sent out, so we should hopefully have an influx of live viewers any moment now. That is my hope and desire for the evening.
Yeah, so I guess the name of this podcast, which is No Assembly Required, I guess it kind of comes from the fact that we're just doing this and just getting stuff started without really, reading the instructions.
Yeah.
And hopefully that kind of leads to us talking about our different projects and stuff that we're working on, and also stuff that we're passionate about as well. Because I know we don't really get too many avenues where we get to talk about that kind of stuff, just because algorithms and whatnot. We're clearly defined and niched down individuals, but from behind the camera and screens, I mean, kind of. I don't know about you.
Views,
I don't know about you.
When we actually want views, yes.
We're complex human beings, and we've got a lot of stuff going on. So, hopefully that. Audrey, do you have trouble with?
Yes, I'm having trouble right now. I keep moving.
With our vertical, so for the people who are listening and don't have the visual component, we're currently using this platform which allows us to do multiple video call, and so it sets stuff up so that we have like three vertical panels. So it's kind of like we're on a FaceTime call, but that kind of limits the range of what is on the frame of the camera. And Audrey is not a huge fan of this setup, but Roberto and I have voted for the vertical panels, and
Democracy.
Vertical panels wins. So
Democracy.
Maybe we should let them vote. To the how many? I don't even know how many people are watching. To 7 people watching, they can vote which one they like.
Oh wow. Okay. You don't trust our judgment?
No comment.
Wow.
What?
Okay.
Maybe we should have prepared a couple.
I'm with Audrey on this one. All right. Mr. Andrew. Oh, horizontal. Excuse me. Oh, look at this. Who are these people? I mean, they don't even know. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. There's 3 of us, you know? It's like how...
And now it's perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
I think we'll just show them. We'll give them an example of a taste of what it's like.
People listening to this are gonna have no clue what's going on right now.
No, well, we visually describe it. We describe it to them.
Yeah, no. For the audio listeners, we're debating the idea of the aesthetic of the video live stream podcast. The framing sucks when you have 3 people not equally and proportionately spaced. It's now like not perfectly symmetrical. It's like it's just this. My OCD cannot take it. All right, it's not fun for me.
All right. So this is like the vertical panels. These are the long vertical panels, and then this is what it looks like horizontal. I don't really like it very much. Mainly because it has like this black thing in the back, and like it's not focused on us, you know, it's not our faces, it's like everything else in the background. So I don't know. I mean, I do like this one. This one really features me.
It's literally just Romina, like huge, and then you're super small on the side.
All right, we're gonna go back to this here, and we're gonna kind of talk. All right, I'm going to jump in and just talk about what I'm kind of doing this month, because I think it might be a little bit interesting.
Okay.
So my friend, Sade, she challenged me. So she's doing a challenge where she's going to try to film every day this month, because, you know, February this month has 29 days. And it's like, oh, what are you going to do with your extra day? Right? One of those like stupid Tumblr things, right? So she found this challenge, and then she was like, hey, Romina, what are you going to do for 29 days? I'm like, well, I don't know. And so I decided to write a poem every day for 29 days. So that's what I'm going to be doing every day. And they're going to be animal themed. So it's kind of fun because like I go in and I like research the animal, and I like read the entire Wikipedia article, and and I write the poem around that. And it's interesting, like kind of because it's a learning experience, but then it's also kind of creative as well. But it's also challenging, and like there's a reward at the end, because at the end I'll have, you know, hopefully at least 29 poems, which would, you know, ideally be enough to get a book going, right? But I don't know. I mean, that kind of thing is, it's kind of fun, and it's just like not everything has to equal work, but I mean, this kind of would lead to that, I guess, because it's like a book. It's also my work, but like at the same time, no pressure, right?
I think when you're a creative person, there's almost no way to avoid work, which is why I don't like the blanket culture of calling everyone a workaholic or saying that people are overworked or calling hustle toxic. I'm like, if you're a creative person, the ideal pinnacle of life would be to live a life where you are creating things all the time, because that is your obsession. That is what separates creative people from everyone else, is they can't stop, you know?
Right.
So that's kind of my thing is, if you enjoy creating, why would you deny yourself that to do things that you enjoy less? If you need a break, take one. If you're burnt out, take one. But I'm annoyed by the fact that we have a culture where everyone's trying to tell everyone what's best for them, instead of like telling them, hey, if you're experiencing something, then have some self-awareness and calibrate, but let's not demonize people for the fact that they may not be typical.
Yeah.
Right.
It's probably good to have like a different creative outlet too, like writing poems. Like I don't know if you did that before, like regularly like that, but it's
Yeah.
probably good to like diversify a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been like a long time. Like I used to write a lot more. Like I used to write every day. And then eventually that led to me having my book published. And I had like some poems that were published in other like anthologies and stuff like that. But eventually, like as I shifted over to video and film, I kind of like left the writing stuff aside. But then I started to pick it up again. And now I'm doing it more frequently, like trying to force myself to like get back into the rhythm of what I had before. Because it's kind of like, you know, when you're making videos, it's like you take a month off of making videos and then like picking up a camera again is like, oh, how do I do this? You know,
Yeah.
like,
God.
and
I
it's kind of
experienced
like,
that.
yeah, it's a kind of like, you know, obviously like, you know how to turn on the camera, but it's like, you know, being in front of the camera, it's like you become lazy, right?
Habits are everything. So what you do, like, kind of ends up being your destiny, and that's like that sounds hokey and stuff like that. But habits are destiny, right? Like
Right.
DNA isn't. It's really down to your what do you do on a regular basis, and like that's who you are. Like until you change it, and that's real. Like I mean, that's been my experience. That's been the experience of very many educated, learned people. Is that yeah, habits are important. That's why like half of the bookshelf now is books on habits. The thing that I would say about that is whatever you feed is what grows, you know? Like if you keep doing something over and over and over and everything like that, there's progress, there's momentum behind it, there's energy behind it. That's like a law of the universe is that like, hey, you know, an object in motion stays in motion until it's acted upon by an equal or greater force. Well, idleness and laziness for creative people is the only thing that can counterbalance creating is like, you know, not doing anything. Like the indolence, the laziness, the like, you know, if you got momentum, the worst thing you can do is break the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. What say you to this, Audrey?
I mean, yeah. I think
Oh.
like one thing that's I'll just agree to everything. No, like I definitely relate to like the like how you're saying the lazy slash just not the momentum is like a huge thing. Like for me, especially when it comes to making stuff. Because I make the best stuff when I get in the creative flow, but it's getting there that's kind of the hard part. Sometimes I don't know, like once I'm in it, it's like hard to stop, but it's kind of, sometimes it's kind of hard to get in the right mindset or just
State of
taking
flow.
the first step. Yeah.
State of flow. Okay, so the flow state, like Audrey, you were an athlete, but you
State
probably
of Flow sounds like a really like great band name.
yeah.
We could have named
But
our
getting into
podcast.
getting into that flow state, right? Is like you were a runner and you were an athlete and you played basketball, right, Audrey?
No basketball. I
No
played soccer.
basketball, but running. You did running.
Yeah.
Like me, cross country track, right?
Yes.
Okay. You remember like how because we were cross country and track, like you had to stretch every day, you had to work out every day. It was just something you did and everything like that.
Yeah.
But because of that, it made it easy to go into that athletic mode of like, okay, this is what I do because there's a pattern there, and your body is kind of initially you're resistant to it, but once you start doing it, it's just easier and easier and easier because this is what you do, and your body is
Yeah.
like, yep, we're ready for it. But when you stop working out and you take a couple of weeks off or you go on winter break or you do something like that, it's harder to start back up again, right?
Yeah.
This is why I believe that this is why one of my arguments is that quality over quantity is a lie that creative people and artists like to tell themselves because it's a very comforting lie. Because if you don't think about quality and quantity as being in opposition to each other, you start to realize little things like the fact that, you know, if I am doing things that are part of my creative process every day, even if it's not that you're making a video or putting a video out on the internet every day, if you are doing things that contribute to your overall goals as a creative person, and you start operating in a way where you're building yourself into like these systems that are working toward that progress or the things that you want, that is quantity, because that's also consistency and it represents a commitment. And when your brain and your body are working toward these commitments that you've made, it's not going to be hard to tap into that flow state and that whole creative mojo. It's going to come a lot quicker over time. You might even find that it starts to become your default state. For my anime nerds out there, it's like making Super Saiyan your default. It's like in the Cell games, it's like when they came out, oh yeah, we're just Super Saiyans all the time now. We're like just this all day. Like we're in our ultimate form all the time.
Yeah, I like to say, like, instead of quality versus quantity, I say quality and quantity. So
Ding, 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 ding.
the thing is that, like, every time somebody asks me or that says, oh, like, I would really love to, start a YouTube channel. I really want to do like XYZ. But like, I don't know, like, I don't think I'm very good in front of the camera, or like, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. They come up with like 3 different excuses. And what I always say to that is, you just have to pick up the camera and do it. And I'm just using that as an example, like to do YouTube. And the moment that you have something that you filmed, you realize, oh, you know what? Nobody ever has to see this, ever. And once like you like lose and like you shed that pressure that you put on yourself, you realize that you can film, you can draw, you can write, you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Nobody has to see it.
Do you think that social media conditions us to feel that if nobody sees what we do, it has no value?
It's possible, but here's what I'm saying with the quantity and quality is.
By the way, I agree with you 100%.
You can make, you can do quantity, so you just keep creating, you keep making stuff, and you can put out just the quality, if that is what's, what makes you proud. I mean, obviously, like, as far as, and I'm just going to use Audrey as an example, because Audrey, she puts like, she shows like her progress of learning how to do something.
Which is what I think is so valuable, because I think that helps other people. Yeah.
Right. So it's a very different kind of, content. Like what she's creating is she's experimenting, and that's like something and that's its own thing. Right. But like, for instance, myself, like I have already written other poems that are part of this collection, but they will probably like, people won't see them because they just aren't really that great, or they were just like notes. They were just me like trying to express myself and get stuff out there, but they're not really that great, or they're not really something that really conveys what I wanted, what I was feeling or anything like that. But it adds on to the quantity factor of it. And then eventually, exactly. And then eventually when I do have that one poem that I do want to share with everybody, then that is the quality aspect.
I agree with that 1,000%. I have one thing to add to that is I think that waiting forever, not you, and this is not what you're saying. I think that there's one issue where like people do that and they convince themselves that one day they're going to put something out, and then they never do, because they've conditioned the habit of never putting anything out. And they've let the fear build up in their guts of, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, it's not good enough, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. That's why I keep saying that. And I agree with you, quality and quantity. And the reason that I bring up that, oh, well, quality over quantity is a lie, is because if you keep telling yourself quality over quantity, you're off the hook. You never have to put something out because you can justify that, oh, I don't want to put out crap, and then that's considered noble. And what it is it's justifying your imposter syndrome and your inferiority complex and your abuse of yourself to say, I'm not good enough. It's not good enough.
Audrey's face right now. No, I
relate. Like that's
I completely agree with you, Roberto. Absolutely. Yeah. Like just, I definitely, there's so many people that like come up to me all the time and are always like, oh, like I have like this thing, but like I'm scared to put it out. But like if you think about how much content is just now more than ever before is the time to just spit stuff out there, because if you are even an ounce proud of what you've done, that's enough. Because
I think you should be proud at the attempt of doing even.
yeah,
You'll
because
probably learn more from like the bad or the failures or whatever anyway, like going
yeah.
forward. So
And it's more so like you have to just get stuff out there. It's kind of like when you really want to cry, and like instead of stopping yourself from crying because you're like, oh man, like I can't cry. No, you just let it out. You just let it out. And then like 98% of the time, you always feel better after you cry. Like, am I wrong in that? It's like, so why not just, let that out there and put your stuff out there and let people see that you've done this,
I think one thing like I see a lot when people ask me like I want to start a channel but I'm too scared or I don't know what to do. I think comparing like their work or what they can do to other people's work is a huge barrier because you see so like these people making this incredible stuff and you're like, "Oh, I could never compete with that." And it just kind of stops like a huge amount of people from just making their first video. But all your first videos are going to suck anyway, so it's just like you need to be
People
okay
don't
with
even
them.
look at where that person started and realize the gap of what a difference experience makes and doing stuff and putting in the work and learning and stuff. That's why I made that video where I say make 100 crappy videos like Mr. Beast and PewDiePie, because I literally went through the effort of editing. And by the way, I learned that side by side crop trick when I made that video. I taught myself how to do something in Premiere to make that video the way I wanted it, learning on the fly. That's part of even what we're talking about. And I showed you side by side, here's Mr. Beast this many years ago, here's him today. Here's Marquez, 14 years old in the dining room, here's him at Video 1000. Here's PewDiePie 10 years later. Like, it's literally, you have to be willing to understand that, one, nobody's an overnight success. We don't get to see the early work of Peter McKinnon, unless he digs it up out of the archives. So he looks like someone who came and started perfect. And even he says that there's flaws in a lot of how he approached things in the beginning. He's talked about it, but people sit there and they're comparing their chapter 1 to someone's chapter 50. And I think it's also wrong to think that you are going to compete with or that you should compare yourself to people with unlimited time and unlimited resources and a vast amount of experience, and often people who, frankly, have help behind the scenes.
Yeah. I'm just going to feature Alex Perucci here. Quality and quantity. I try and stay committed to my schedule I set for myself so I can stay consistent while also trying to do the best I possibly can on each video and just continue to improve. So this definitely goes alongside with what Roberto was saying about just not holding back, just waiting for it to be good enough or perfect. Alex has a schedule that he's committed to, and by doing that, he forces himself to put content out there, even if it's not, quote unquote, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the way to do it. I think having a schedule, especially if you're just getting started, is great because it forces you to keep yourself accountable and like not make excuses when it comes to that stuff. So, yeah.
Ooh, we got a great quote from Gabe. Gabe over here.
Someone.
Make art, and while people are deciding whether they like it or not, make more art.
I recognize that. Who's that from?
Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us who that is, huh? He put it in quotation marks too, so it's obviously not his. Roberto, is this your quote? Are you just quietly flexing over there? What's going on?
I don't know if it is. The thing is, I say so many freaking things, I have no idea.
No. All right. Well. Oh, I see. Okay, so the quote is from Peter McKinnon. He copied it. All right. Thanks for fessing up, Gabe, after we confronted you about it. It's all right. It's all right to steal people's quotes, I guess.
Speaking of Peter, it's like one of the things he and I talked about last year quite a bit was making art for yourself, and also not feeling like you have to share everything, and not feeling like you have to monetize your creativity all the time, because there's a point where the pressure and the stress to do that affects the actual thing that you're doing, and in a way you can't trust that you're doing it based on what you want to make anymore. It doesn't belong. In a way, it stops belonging to you. It stops being your art. And it was something like, we really went into quite a bit, both when like we were at VidCon and he was on stage, because it was the question I asked him. And he went into that question for like 8 minutes on stage. It was really cool. Then he ended up making a video about that exact idea. And now Audrey and Romina, our friend Cody Warner actually has been talking a lot about that, and he talked about why he doesn't want to be a full-time YouTuber anymore, specifically partly that reason.
I really thought, like, when Cody's talking about that, because I've also, when you said that, it made me think a lot, because I've also been sort of thinking about that right now, because I'm trying to diversify like my sources of income, not bank as much on growing the YouTube and stuff, just to relieve the pressure so I can be more creative and kind of, I don't know, just do different stuff instead of.
So that you have a way, because if you monetize everything, or if you bank on YouTube, then it's not a platform for expression anymore, which is like, I tell people it's okay to have 2 YouTube channels and to have something where it's like, okay, go nuts, do what you want, and then here's the business that I built. And that can take some pressure off. That's why some people have a vlog channel, honestly, so they can feel like they're talking to their audience again, instead of making something to give to brands.
I'm not there yet at all. I was just kind of trying to prevent that, because I could see it happening. I could see it potentially happen. And I was just like, I need to diversify so I'm not stressed about it, so that I can keep being as creative as I want. And
the people who look like successful YouTubers, they let YouTube take over their life. Yeah. And then they end up having to backpedal. I mean, plus, Romina, you've been around forever. You've seen it.
Yeah. And also it depends on, we can go down the rabbit hole of monetization on YouTube, but views does not equal riches.
Nope.
And there's definitely there's been instances where YouTubers have a hard time, and I'm going to say this is going to sound ridiculous, but they have a hard time integrating into everyday normal life and jobs because of the audience that they have, where a girl might have 400,000 subscribers on YouTube, and you'd think, oh wow, she's successful, she's doing this full time, but she actually works as a barista at a coffee shop somewhere like Starbucks or whatever, because that's what pays the bills. And people will go in and be like, oh my gosh, look, it's so and so, she's working at Starbucks. What?
We actually read about a YouTuber that had this experience, because she was someone who, she worked at BuzzFeed but wasn't getting paid enough to make her living, was making viral content in a YouTube channel that they actually had part ownership of, but she couldn't do her job as a server because kids would keep coming up and memorized her schedule and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that makes it so hard, because it's she's, they're obviously trying to build something. So then, when you have to have another job in order to support that. But then when people, are coming in and stuff like that, it makes it difficult to keep that job. And then it's how do you grow the audience when it's all just such a mess, right?
Roberto, I saw you tweet something to, what's her name, Tiffany Ferguson, about a video she made about and I thought that I literally just watched that video yesterday or something, and I thought it was super interesting.
I'm doing what will probably be a 45-minute video on that same topic. I'm going to reference her video, but it's not a rebuttal to her video. It's it's my version of that same video, because I've been planning a video like that and rehashing it and deleting it for months. And now I think I have my main talking points. Thank you, Tiffany, for that. I have my talking points, and now I can expand from her talking points, I can use the same structure. I can address some of the same issues, plus the other 5 things I want to talk about, and therefore my video will be 10 minutes longer because I'm Roberto. But yes,
It's already like really long.
Yeah, it's gonna be a 45-minute. I'm telling you, it's gonna be a 45-minute video. I'm gonna get all the damn watch time. I'm gonna get all the watch time because it's literally to answer the question: should YouTubers quit their day jobs? Is a nuanced question because there's multiple facets to it. It's what's your risk tolerance, what's your amount of business sense, what justifies that for you may not justify it for somebody else. There's no arbitrary number of how many subscribers, how many views per month, or any of that dictates that it's safe to do this thing, because entrepreneurship isn't for people who care about safety. It's about risk tolerance. Then there's the addressing and the need to address the idea of what is legitimate work and what is not legitimate work, you know. So that's a big deal. And then I really need to call out this thing that's really bugging me, which is envy and the conversation of envy and privilege, because to suggest that, and I understand, and I even sometimes say this or I misspeak in saying that being a content creator is to be in somewhat of a privileged position. But I think I'm still being very nuanced when I say somewhat of a privileged position, because the reality is anybody who's like complaining about their hard to do manual labor job, theoretically, as long as there's not a physical reason we can't do that, we could all just do and step into their job, and they're all like, and they won't debate that fact. That's like, they say, oh, like try and do my job. It's like, it'd be hard, but once our body became accustomed to it, we would be able to do your job if that's what we had to do. Right. Because it's not a skilled labor job. It's something that anyone can be trained for, of average intelligence. That's why it's a job for normal people. But creative work is not a job for normal people. Creative work is nuanced, and creative work requires one, creative talent and ability, but then learning technical and very specific skills and human behavior and psychology. And the thing is, what I do every day, what Audrey does every day, what Romina does every day, what most content creators on this platform who are successful do every day, the normal people who envy them and say they're spoiled brats or how dare you or you should get a real job, if I made them for 20 or 30 days do my workload, they would fail at it for 20 or 30 days. And I would be, if I was like, okay, cool, you're going to do my job and I'm going to be your boss and I'm going to give you like, and the thing is, to get my salary and to get the income that I get, you have to actually succeed at this job, or for the next 30 days, I'm going to fire you every day for the next 30 days. And you know what would happen, guys? I would be firing those same people in those comments every day for 30 days and not paying them. Versus if I go do their job, it's not something that we're going to fail at 30 days in a row in most cases.
So Ashley just brought up something that I would like to respond to. So she says, isn't YouTube about building a brand, not a channel? And I would say yes, but it's also don't think about YouTube as something to build on its own as a business, but rather a lead generator. So it's more so, yes, you are building a brand, but it is leading traffic to somewhere else that will eventually be your actual brand, your business. So it is something that goes on the side with that, I would say.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm reading the comments and I'm just nodding my head. No, I'm reading the comments.
Wait, can we bring up comments on the screen like you did?
No.
No, only Romina has those powers.
What?
Only Romina has those powers. Yeah, but I mean, and again, but there's also the issue of most influencers don't diss the 9-to-5 job or having a day job. I mean, most influencers and most content creators had their 9-to-5 job or their day job or part-time job or whatever while they were building their stuff, unless they did it straight out of school or something. You know what I'm saying? And then there are people who are complaining about the fact that our culture and makes having a regular job look and feel undesirable. And the thing is, most people don't work their job because they want to. So
Right.
I would make the argument that as a culture and society, we've decided that a 9 to 5 job isn't desirable. I would say not being in control of your schedule, not being able to dictate when you see your family, not being able to say when you see their kids. I would say that that culture is not something that most people do want. They want the stability of an income. They want
Right.
to feel they contribute meaning and value to society. They want to be acknowledged for their skills. They want social interaction. Those things are a byproduct in some cases of having a regularly accepted employment. The respect of the community is also where regular employment is perceived as legitimate and said, okay, because the difference is if you're doing a influencer thing or this, the reality is your thing isn't any less legitimate. The IRS considers it legitimate because they tax you on it. So you're paying the same taxes and sometimes more taxes than other people. Sometimes you're a job creator yourself because you're hiring people in the gig economy or you're hiring full-time workers and stuff like that or part-time people. You're buying things for your business. It's like you're contributing just as much to society as somebody who does a regular day job. So like I don't feel that it's appropriate to pretend that it's not legitimate work just because it's self-employment and because it looks easy because you're looking at the results and the lifestyle. It's like you wouldn't call it easy if you had to do it yourself.
Yeah. But we got a really important question here, which is why doesn't Audrey get her name in all caps?
I think
So on the live stream here, we have our names over our videos, our respective videos, and Roberto and I both have caps on our names, but Audrey does not. She's just regular capitalized A, just very normal. I would say that is Audrey's fault because
I can probably change that.
yeah, Audrey, you were the one who's in control of that. When you first logged on, you should have been prompted as to what your name is. So I'm pointing fingers at you.
Okay. I don't know how this platform works. So
Wow.
I would just say that Audrey doesn't use StreamYards very often. I don't think most of us do, aside from me, because I'm a frequent cast member on Friday Night Viper. Which if you guys want to check out another great podcast our friend Viper does, Vipe Drive, and I think it's in all the podcast platforms, and that's Vipe Drive, VYPDRIVE. And no, Vipa did not pay me for the plug today. We don't have any sponsors today.
Not yet.
Not yet,
I'm
right?
gonna contact him now. I'm gonna say, hey, look, this podcast got this many downloads.
Yeah.
Pay
By
up.
the way, did you guys know that Tutvid in here is Nathaniel Dodson, and he's like one of my favorite like OG content creators. He's been on YouTube for like a decade with the best tutorials for like Adobe stuff ever, and that he was one of the first people to ever actually be supportive of me in the how-to space when I started on YouTube, and he's at almost 1 million subscribers right now.
Are we talking about Tutvid right now?
Yeah, and he's here in our podcast chilling out. Like we've
Yeah,
got,
he's
like,
the one who asked about Audrey's name in all caps.
Yeah.
Asking all the important questions. So Terrence Williams says, I'm in a rut right now on YouTube, thinking of just pivoting my content to one major focus / niche.
So he's implying that he doesn't have one right now, and it's very random.
I guess so. That's what it sounds like.
Like when people tell me that, it's my first question is, well, what's your, like, why are you making videos? Because if it's just for fun, then I don't know. Like we need more info. Like how long has he been making stuff? Is he serious about wanting to grow this, or is he just doing it for fun, or both? Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's also a really important question too. Like, are you just doing this for fun? Because if you are, then there's no point in doing the niching down.
If I think of someone's legitimately doing YouTube for fun, because a lot of people say they're doing YouTube for fun, if you want to grow on YouTube, then you're not just doing it for fun anymore. Because like when you play a video game and you're playing a video game for fun and not competitively, you don't worry about your high score. You don't worry about collecting all the golden coins. You don't care about 100% completion. When you start playing like that, you're being competitive. Okay? When you're like playing basketball, you'll goof around. If you're playing for fun, you goof around and you'll dribble the ball between your legs and you'll try and do hook shots and you'll do all kinds of nonsense. If you're playing for serious, you know when you're playing for serious. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
a lot of people will tell themselves that I'm doing this for fun, but they're lying to themselves or they're not self-aware. They may not be lying to themselves. They might not be self-aware and they're letting themselves off the hook so that they can have it both ways. And that never works. You can't have it both ways. You're either trying to grow your channel like and do something with it and you're not. And the thing is, if you're not, then growth happens, that's different. And that's where, to be honest, a lot of successful people, they weren't trying. The biggest content creators in this platform, most of them weren't trying. They were just having fun and they were challenging themselves creatively to see what they could do with this goofy idea. They had something in their head. And so they genuinely were trying to express themselves. It became serious for them later when they realized that they could have fun for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lottery of Life says that Audrey said she will use all caps when you let her do horizontal videos.
Someone made that up, but I agree with them.
Oh, Lord. So that's how it's going to be now.
Alex says, hot take. Audrey is actually the only one who did it correctly.
It's kind of true. Why did you guys?
Oh, we need to actually come up with clever and creative titles for our podcast episodes. We're like, I know you just threw this together with episode 1, but like we needed like.
Well, yeah, I mean, doesn't the title come after we've filmed the episode? I mean, because we don't know what our topic is. What am I going to call it?
We can come up with something interesting and weird and enticing without having a plan.
That is not related at all.
All right, I'll let you do it, Roberto, Mr.
Okay,
showing up 10 minutes late.
Yeah. Like, no, you could have literally titled it and everything like that. The guy who's always late. Let's pivot. Like we said we were gonna make a podcast not be about YouTube, and
15 minutes later here.
Hey, we're talking about Audrey and her lack of capitalized letters. So
I got something because you were talking about you're doing your animal poems earlier. Like, so here's an interesting thing that you two know about me that the audience doesn't know about me. When I was a kid, I was super, super into animals and zoology, and I used to get like zoo books, and I was like obsessed with National Geographic, and I wanted to be Steve Irwin and a little bit Crocodile Dundee, to be honest. Like, maybe I just wanted to be Australian. Maybe that's what I wanted.
I think you just wanted to be Australian.
Crikey.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh my God.
And there go all of our Australian viewers.
Yeah, no. Well.
Oh, no.
So, like,
we lost Australia.
Yeah, no. But
yeah, that's really cool. I mean,
I was super into it.
Yeah, I grew up like, very much going to the Everglades all the time. And so just wildlife was ingrained in, just my everyday life. And also Steve Irwin was definitely one of my favorite people ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, Audrey, did you ever watch a Steve Irwin? Was that not?
I don't know.
Well, she's looking at me like,
I don't know.
Lady, she's asking me. She's like, excuse me, Steve Irwin? What?
Dude, I almost went to college for zoology. If it wasn't media, that's what it would have been.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
No.
Wait,
then I realized I hate medicine and I don't want to like.
I like people like when I released the photos that I took when I went to camera camp. I went to Sony camera camp that Justine and Jenna Izarek put on, and when I showed the shots that I got like of the elk, and when I showed my landscape photography and everything like that, because people had heard me talk about like my photography and about shooting for myself and not like always sharing my art on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like they've heard me talk about those stuffs, but like I think that They're like, yeah, sure. Oh, like, taking pictures of products or camera gear or whatever, or like whatever, model headshots, yada, yada, yada. But like when people saw my landscape photography and when they saw my wildlife photography for the first time and me sharing that, like it really changed their, oh, you really did want to be like a serious, legit photographer back in the day. Like you really could be just a photographer if you actually were putting all your energy into that. But it's one more of those things that at a certain point I decided to keep for me versus wanting to like monetize. To the point we talked about earlier with like keeping something for yourself and creative. Like they're like, even now when I play video games, like I don't stream on Twitch, even though people are like, oh yeah, I totally watch that. I'm like, but I'm doing it for me. I'm doing something for, if I start streaming video games, at some point when you have an audience, you feel obliged to them and like you have to listen to them and you have to give them what they want. And now that takes in some cases away from some of what you want.
So talking about that, fun fact, my YouTube channel, which is currently my main channel, Red Romina, was actually my gaming channel. So it was actually my side channel. I had made it for just gaming. And the reason it was called Red Romina is because that was my gamer tag on PlayStation. So
what happened?
What happened was exactly what Roberto just said. I started playing stuff. Like I bought all the stuff that I would need to stream the games. And then eventually like I decided that I was just going to focus on doing like mobile gaming, because not a lot of people were doing that. And like mobile gaming still had like this kind of, oh, that's not like a real video game kind of like thing. So I was like, oh, I'm going to tap into that, of course, because that's the thing everybody hates. So of course I'm the one who's going to jump into that.
Let's just jump into it.
I did start doing it though. Like if like my first few videos on that channel were all me streaming and playing video games. And with the main focus of mobile games. And the reason that I didn't keep that up was because every time that I was going to go make a video, I was like, this is making me not want to play games. Because when I want to play games, I just want to have fun and I just want to play games. I want to zone out. I want to become a potato. Like, I don't want to think, I just want to be there like a zombie for 1 to 3 hours and then kill the enemies. That's all I want to do. So like having to set up and then having to set up like the streaming stuff. And it was just something that I was like, okay, this is clearly not for me. And I remember like when PewDiePie first started that he like spent like this money just like to get like this gaming machine. Like he set out to just do like this gaming channel. And I remember like watching him doing that. And then
he hated it.
And then he hated it. Exactly.
He had to take a break for it to ever fall in love with gaming again.
At least he made it that far though. Like me, I called it quits. Like after a few, I was like, this is not for me. And then I just deleted all of those videos, and my subscribers that I had on there were very confused when I suddenly started posting travel videos. And that was that. Because you know what? I mean, some stuff is for making money. Work is work. And some stuff is just for fun. And some stuff is like, I do stuff that like nobody has to know that I do. Right. And it's just stuff that relaxes me, and it's stuff that I enjoy. And it's a way for me to express myself either creatively or intellectually, because it doesn't always have to be creative. Not all of us are freaking Picasso or Van Gogh over here. It's like, I don't know.
So, you know what, like, is something that a lot of people don't like. This is going to sound like, oh, not everybody can do that, Roberto, blah, 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 right? But, and I haven't done it yet, so let's just be clear about that, but it's like, one of the quickest paths to, like, unlimited freedom is to, as quickly as possible, make between $1 and $2.5 million as quickly as possible, because then you literally, off of the returns on that, can just do whatever the hell you want for your rest of your life, and you have a six-figure income. And that's why they call that financial freedom, and that's why people break their necks trying to do it by age 30, and because it means for the rest of their life they can have whatever lifestyle more or less that they want, and still have that money there for retirement, but it's generating enough money. The money's generating enough money to say, I can do whatever I want. I can live a humble lifestyle, but I have the money to travel the world on top of that humble lifestyle. I have the money to start a business if I want. I have the money to, so like they do that. And not everybody can just do it. And I'm not saying that. I'm just making the point that there's if you can figure out, if you decided that, or if you got to a place to where, because my version of it is like at this point, I figured out passive income systems to where, and I make content. And so like what people don't realize is that during most of my day, if I wasn't trying to build something bigger, and if I wasn't trying to, because I literally don't work 12-hour days. People think I work 12-hour days. Like I don't really do that. And I take naps. And I play with my dogs, and you guys have met my dogs.
Yeah, they need attention.
Tugboat.
They are massively they love attention. They're just freaking children. There's my dogs are gorgeous though.
Gabe says, "Oh, so I just need to make a six-figure income." Okay, cool.
But legitimately, that's true. Legitimately,
no, it's
if
really
you can
here.
Do that, you can invest money,
it,
and then long term you'll be okay.
Right. Obviously, all of us want to get to that point, but I think as an easier a stepping stone, I would say my recommendation would be track your expenses, and after about 3 months, you kind of should have an average of how much you're spending every month. So you've decided, okay, I spend about $800 a month. This is maybe food, maybe transportation, maybe, your rent, whatever it is that amount is. So you're spending $800 a month. So now that you've done that, you have to figure out, okay, how can I make those $800 a month in a way that is not going to kill me every month?
Yes.
And whether that is through automated income, or
thank you for using my term.
Some kind of,
I love that.
Some kind of investment, having an Airbnb, you know what I mean? Having something where that isn't as stressful to you, so that any money that you make after that amount becomes your luxury, your savings, your retirement, becomes your comfort, gives you the time that you need in order to, do that thing that you want to do in private, to have fun, to, Roberto plays with his dogs, right? So this is, I don't know, that's kind of my recommendation of how to get started. So it's not as, obviously once you get to that point, it's okay, you want to take it to the next level. It's well, now I've reached that point, but I'd like to actually go to the movies every weekend. I want to go every Friday. Okay, well, now you're spending, $20 every week, which adds up. So
yeah,
as you have more time, more liberty to do things, you're going to be spending more money probably to do those things. And you might just want a bigger house. I don't know. You might just want to travel more. And there's things, they cost money. So then
you have to decide on the price
build up.
You have to I like what you said about start with tracking your expenses, because this obviously next step number one, I skipped 20 steps to the thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's right. Go big or go home. Right?
But one of those things that is really important that I figured out was you have to actually literally put a number to the lifestyle that you want, and really think about what that looks like every month, and how much money you want to spend, and really make a decision about this book I read called FU Money. It's by this entrepreneur Dan Locke. people are like say he's controversial or whatever, but like the book is solid. I don't care whatever he's doing now, but whenever he wrote this book, the info was solid, and that's still true. But like FU money, he gives these like examples of goals you can set, and there's like an FU money goal. So you set a goal and you say, this is the lifestyle, these are the things that I want, this is what I think I deserve in life. And then you literally do the research and you find out how much does that cost. Now you have to build your life and your habits and your systems and your pursuits in a way that puts you in a position to have that. So you're moving and you're making progress towards saying this is a specific thing. Because instead of, oh, I'm gonna go with the flow and everything like that, if you go with the flow, life will lead you often to places you have really no intention of being, and more importantly, that you have no business being there in that situation and those circumstances. But if you set a clear vision for your life. This is why I believe in like things like the law of attraction and making vision boards, which a lot of entrepreneurs say is woo woo BS and whatnot. But I'm like, it's really no different than making a business plan. It's just making a business plan and doing it in a way where you're creating something that's going to set your intentionality and something that's going to motivate you and inspire you. You're creating, a framework for your success when you do this, because you're saying, here's what I want. It's like if you're building a house, you'd have a floor plan for that house, right? Why does no one build a floor plan for their life? Why does nobody build a framework and say, this is what I want in life, and now I'm going to build habits and systems and routines that are determined to get me there, that have been proven that will get me there, and saying, well, how long do I want that to take? What quality of life am I going to have to do that? What am I going to sacrifice to do that? What, and is it, and you have to make those decisions.
I think last year, especially when I was kind of just very unsure of what I wanted to do, like it's hard to plan those things when you don't have the clarity on like what exactly you want to do. And maybe some people like in the comments can relate to that. Like I wanted to do that, but I didn't know how to go backwards from something where I didn't know what the
you start
was.
small. You start small, like you smart stall. Like, Audrey, what's something that you would like to know that you've accomplished, at some point?
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, I know that when I was your age, I said to myself that if I'm gonna
When
be
you were
like,
87?
right, back when I was young, so when I was your age, Audrey, like one of the things that I wanted to do was, because I was setting out the goal of being a graphic designer, is I wanted to have my work on billboards, right? Well, when I was 25, 26, I was working at an ad agency in Midtown Manhattan, and I got to see my work on billboards in Times Square because of the agency. And so, but the thing is, if I hadn't said that I want that goal, would I've made the choices that led to that? Would I've gotten to that place? So that was a career goal. I said when I was your age that I was reading Advanced Photoshop and Photoshop magazine, and I said, you know what? It would be great to see my work in the featured artist section of this, or it'd be great to see my work on the cover of this magazine. And you know what? I ended up doing that. And the reason I did that is because since I set that intention, I started uploading to the website. I started completing in the featured contest, and I started doing that. And I won a Creator's Choice Award, Editor's Choice Award. So I can always say I'm an award-winning digital artist. I'm an award-winning graphic designer because I won a Advanced Photoshop Editor's Choice Award in, I believe it was 2012 or 2013. And I can say that I had my own digital artwork, not client work, published in magazines that I was reading at the beginning of my career. But those things would have never happened if I hadn't said, oh, gee, this is something I'd like to have achieved in my career. Or working with Adobe, like that was something, oh, that's the dream. So what's something that's like a dream of yours? Because you've already fulfilled a lot of what would be people who grew up on YouTube's dreams. You've met a lot of like huge people and people that you've admired and you've worked with and collaborated with. You've worked with brands like, but what's something that you still haven't checked on like that bucket list of, oh, this would be dope to do?
Travel with Romina.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, my biggest goal right now is to be able to be like self-sustaining doing creative stuff, whether that's YouTube or like multiple creative things going on at the same time, like freelancing too. Like that's kind of my biggest goal right now.
What would that number look like? What self-sustaining look like?
Let me pull out my budget. I don't know.
Right?
I don't know off the top of my head.
No, because for real, like
no,
my goal.
Roberto has to really like. You don't have to say it on the screen
No,
or on
no,
the
you
podcast.
don't. But I'm asking the like, yeah.
Right, but it definitely like. Honestly, like people used to ask me that question, and it was like, "Oh, I don't know, whatever." Like, I just want to be. But having an actual number, like, so last year, one of my goals for 2019 was to track every single dollar that came in and out the entire year, which I did. So starting January 1st all the way to December 31st, I have spreadsheets of every single dollar, every single cent that I spent and that I made last year. And because of that, I have an extremely clear view of how much money I need to make every month in order to not only survive, but to live comfortably by my standards, not luxuriously, not like, comfortably, where I can feel like I'm secure, where I can pay my bills and have a little bit of fun on the side and save up for the future and for emergencies. I know exactly what that number is because I've done the research.
Yeah.
So again, this goes back to, it was Gabe, I think. So it goes back to what I said to Gabe, which is, you start by just documenting. Obviously, I have OCD and I'm crazy with my spreadsheets. I'm spreadsheet crazy. So you don't have to take it to that level of extreme. But if you more or less just look at like your bank account, your credit cards, and just sum up the total of what you spend every single week, at the end of the month, you have a total of how much you've spent that month.
Or you can do it the way that I love to do. Well, there's two methods. There's the free, cheap, very frugal method, and then there's the okay, I have to pay the IRS, so I better do it this way method. And so for me, the free, cheap day-to-day expense method is to get the Mint app because it's free. So you can get that, or you can get I think it's called, I think the other one is called Capital Finance. So there's two like free trackers that track, you just put all of your cards, all your stuff in, tracks income, tracks spending, and it's like, here's everything, right? It can even track your investment portfolio. So you can just put everything in there and know what your net worth is at any given time. You can have all of that, right? You can set budgets in it. You can do everything, and it's free. It's free. It's 100% free, and not sponsored. Not sponsored. But then for bookkeeping, if you have a business, I use Bench because it's not just an app; it's a service, and you have a team of people doing your bookkeeping for you, and you also put in all of your stuff, and they track it. They ask you questions, they categorize it, and then it's good to go when it's time for your tax filing. So I take away the headache of having to manually do the spreadsheets and have OCD, and I use either robots or other people because I believe in automation, and I'm trying to help bring that robot apocalypse faster and faster and faster.
No, I think that's really, really great. Like I used to use Mint. I've been using, I don't use it anymore, but I started using Mint years ago, like when they first were, like before they got acquired, like when it was just
before
like
Intuit bought them,
where it was just like this little like random company, and everyone's like, "What? You're connecting your credit cards to some random like website? That's crazy." I started using them then,
and now everyone does it.
And now everyone does it. I started using them then, and so I was tracking my stuff. And the reason that I switched over to doing it manually last year was just because, first of all, like having a business, because I'm actually incorporated, plus I am my own person. So I have not only my personal expenses, but I also have my business expenses. And Mint does not provide a easy way to do separate it. You have to literally have like two different accounts and have like different credit. Like it's way too complicated for me, for someone who doesn't really have employees and just works for themselves. So I switched over to the spreadsheet just because it was easier for me, and also because I love spreadsheets. So it's also very, like at some point I will separate it and have somebody else take over that. But to start off, doing it myself and seeing exactly where my money was going and where it was coming from, is definitely a learning experience that I recommend everyone go through at least for 3 months, because it really, really shows you like what you're spending money on, where you're making your most income, what you should be focusing on. Because of course, like, oh, YouTube is very nice. And like, I was making like really great money off of YouTube just, 2 years ago, but suddenly it's not doing so well. But if I wasn't monitoring that, I would still be assuming that I was making X amount of dollars a month because that's how much I was making 2 years ago. But that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So
I actually know some large creators that got into financial troubles because they didn't keep track of and their spending, and they were just throwing money at their content. Like someone who's been public about her struggles with that and about what happened with her production company was Shameless Maya. I think you remember what happened with her. Like, and she ended up in massive debt because she kept like throwing this stuff, and then it's like, oh, the money, like then her people were like, oh yeah, we're out of money, and then she was like, wait, what? I thought it was bringing in all this money. What happened? Like, so yes, I agree with manually looking at stuff and understanding it. And so like, so for you, Audrey, like part of that is like Romina said, if you track everything and then you do the next thing, which I say is, all right, once you know what you have and you know what is, now you can think about what you might need, and then you can start making some plans and some goals and saying, well, realistically, how much money do I need to make? And to Romina's point, not just to survive, but to like, what's acceptable as a lifestyle? What do you want? And what will make you not stress out about money? And then how you go about that from there is kind of like, we've talked about a lot of stuff I do was I like looked at what skills I had to throw at building up different income sources a piece at a time. And I started looking at what grows the most from the least amount of time and effort, like what gives me the most for the least amount of time and effort, and what is the most scalable. And so I started putting more time into things that do that I don't hate, because I also looked at, well, where do I derive enjoyment in my process of monetizing? What creates the least stress to monetize? So I balanced all that, and I said, you know what? There was a point where freelancing was like, okay, dealing with clients is just not worth it for the amount of money that I make. Right. I'm going to focus on affiliate marketing because it takes humans out of the equation while still delivering value. And I'm serious, just because when you have clients, sometimes they don't pay on time. You did everything right and they don't pay on time. That's too stressful. That's too frustrating, And then when you don't have clients, you pray for even the bad clients to come back, And that's too stressful. So I started looking at what creates stability and what gives me the least amount of stress when it comes to making money. And so I started looking at it, and I realized that I'm happiest making money when I can use systems to make money, and where value is extracted with the least amount of haggling, and value and like compensation happens with the least amount of haggling, and where things just feel very, very clear. So I started wanting to get to things where I'm not trading necessarily time for money, I'm trading results for money, which freelancing is just moves from hourly model to setting rates. And then I set my rates based on like what I could deliver on and what was going to provide for me what I needed. And I knew what that number was, to Romina's point. And then I started looking at the automation side of automated income, because I decided that I wanted to be able to deliver value, but I wanted to use systems to do it, because I wanted to remove myself from the equation so that I can do things that make me happier, and so that I can actually live my life, and so that I'm not like, if you build systems, there is a point, if you build them correctly, where you're not necessarily working for your living. Right. What you're doing for your living is you're maintaining your systems, and there comes a point where you can even outsource or automate that because you're profitable. And that's what nobody talks about, is that when everyone says passive income or automated income is BS, they're not factoring for the equation is you can 100% move yourself out of the equation if you have the leverage to do that. It's just not going to happen overnight. But if you make that the goal, and there's no reason, and that's not a lazy goal to have. If you're working for the fulfillment of your dreams, if you want to build a family, if you want to, like, there's no reason to not set there's no reason for someone to judge the life that you want to live,
Right.
because they don't have to live it.
Yeah, that actually that brings up a good point. There's actually a couple comments that I want to feature. So Andy says that he's weird about his number, the number being, the goal of X amount of dollars that you want or need to make, because I love video editing so much that I'd live in my car if I could do it full time. So basically, Andy, like, again, like what I said earlier, I know what I'm comfortable with. I know the kind of stuff that I love to do for fun and how much that costs me every month. So because of that, I know how much I need to make. Now, if you're comfortable living on a bus and you are only going to be spending, $30 a month on your living expenses, then that is really good for you because you figured out what makes you comfortable and how much money it would cost you to have that. On the other hand, another segue is Ashley. Earlier, she asked, how much should you take from your income to put back into your business? And I think that really depends on, first of all, what is the business that you're doing, and how much do you want it to grow and how quickly? So obviously, if you want it to grow more quickly, you're going to want to put more money into it at the starting stages. But ultimately, that's up to you and what kind of empire you want to build. Like if you look at like Pixar, when they first started, the animators were sleeping, like they were married, they had their wives and husbands, and like they were sleeping at the office just to get movies made, just to make A Bug's Life, just to make these movies. So they're sacrificing their time. They're obviously working overtime in order to complete these projects. And that is what they've put back into the business. But because they did that, because they spent all that time making those, the first, 4 movies that completely established, Pixar in the animated industry as like this powerhouse, that was what they put into it. That's what they got back. So it really depends on what you want to get back.
If you're a solo entrepreneur, though, like Pixar is a very specific situation. They also had some outside funding. If you're self-funded, if you have a self-funded business and you have a cash flow business, you realistically can only ever really put, if you're talking about what you put back into the business to grow it, you can only realistically ever put back 20 to 30% into the business tops. And the reason I say that is because I'll show you the math on it. You have to put aside 30% of your money for taxes to be safe, to not end up owing. So you have to put aside 30% for that. Then realistically, you need to put aside 10% of everything for operating capital. That's not growing, that's staying alive, usually. At a minimum, depending on how you've set up the margin of your business. The average person also lives off of at least 30% of their overall income anyway. So assuming your business is your sole or main source of income, you're living off of 30% of that as it is, which only leaves you 30% left. And that's not including anything to invest in your future or your retirement. And so at best, you have 30 to 20% left. Now, again, varying for some other factors, some people don't live off of their business and they have some runway and maybe they get to invest up to 50%. So that's the high number. But realistically, the most anyone can put into growing their business, if they're living off of it at the same time, and if they're not making so much money that they can live off of 10% of their income in like a Graham Stephan like situation or something like that, where you can like, oh, I'm only living off 10% of my income, so then you can do other things. Most people, at best, you're going to have 20 or 30% left, if anything, to think about growing your business if you're lucky or very smart or making a lot.
So Brooke says, so is it wrong to base cost based on the client's budget? And I believe Roberto responded with a really great little nugget of information. Roberto says, he said this in the live chat, by the way, for the people listening, how you base cost is up to you internally. All the client sees is the invoice, not how you came to that conclusion. That being said, you have to make the value clear to the client, which is a really great point, because, you know, should you base the cost on whatever the client's budget is? That depends on where you are with your experience and what you are willing to do as well. Because even if you are amazing, for example, I've used this example before. I have a decade of experience editing video. And that has always been projects, my own stuff, not working for other people doing video editing. Now, starting to do video editing for other people, I am willing to work for something that's a little bit less than what I know that I'm worth, because I want to have that repertoire. I want to have that portfolio, that thing on my portfolio, to be able to show people, oh, I worked, with this brand and I made this video for them. Even if it's not exactly what I ideally would like to be paid, and I know that I am getting paid less than what I'm worth, but in the end, it's worth it to me because I'm building a portfolio, which I don't have, even if I have the experience. But that is me personally, just like a very specific example. But again, like what Roberto said, is at the end, they're just going to see the number that you give them. And as long as it's a specific number and you are confident about it and you can tell them why it is that number, it's either a yes or no from them. Yeah. And you have to just not be afraid if it is a no.
And with brands, I tell people to ask for their budget a lot of times and just tell them, hey, be straight with me. What's in the budget for this? And then you tell them what you can deliver on for that. And then that's the game if you're talking about doing that kind of work.
So this also answers Alex's question, which is, does anybody ever take a job knowing you're probably being taken advantage of, but you do it anyways just because you want the experience, which is basically
like working for free, right? Like at first,
yeah. Like
you kind of have, I mean, you don't have to, but it's normally when you're getting started, like you're probably going to have to do that.
It depends on your industry. It depends on what you're doing. But there is plenty of like intern work. There's plenty of, places where you can volunteer. That's also another aspect, where you're not necessarily working or getting a job or being taken advantage of, but where you're actively choosing to volunteer to do something. For example, if you're into science, you go and you do volunteer at like researching at a lab or something, right? And it's like, well, you're not working, but you know what? You're actually doing something that's going to help you, and you can add that to your resume, and it will give you validation for a future job. So it really depends on like your experience and like what you are willing to do and for how long, because it's like if you're living in Manhattan and you just graduated from NYU, you might not want to be doing like free work for a very long time. You might not be able to afford to, so that really depends on where you are, where you're at in your life.
I say when you're trying to get experience, if your answer is that you want to do your craft, but you can't afford to, in your mind, do it for nothing, but you haven't gained any experience, and you know that the market's competitive and that someone can pay. If someone can pay and you're a beginner, they shouldn't be paying you. And that sounds harsh and people don't like when I say that, but it's the truth, is because if someone's going to pay, I'm sure that in their network, or if they go and they look, or if they ask somebody like that they have a relationship with, they can pay for certainty and they can pay for somebody with experience. So that being said, where does that leave you in the justification if you're just out of school and stuff like that? You don't have a body of work, you don't have a reputation, you don't have those contexts, you're literally a nobody to them. Why should they entrust anything in their business, and why should they entrust their reputation to you? Because I don't think people understand what an ask is. You know what I'm saying? I don't think people understand that hiring you to do work is not just hiring you to do work. The stakes that this means for me are much more than they are for you. So when you offer to do something for free, you're saying I'm not a risk if you are a risk adverse person, which means that I'm creating a scenario where there's not a massive penalty for trusting me past a certain point, because it's bad enough that you have to trust me with your reputation. You're asking if I take your money, you're trusting me, a stranger, with your reputation and your money. And that's a lot. Versus if you are going to do that, you probably want to do it with a homie or with somebody who was referred and is in the network that's not going to be exiled from the network into the wilderness. So, like, you could pay for certainty if you're going to pay somebody. I say that if your thing is, I can't afford to do free work, I have to be compensated for my time, go do a job where you're trading time for money, and then to gain a reputation in your craft, deliver for people that can vouch for you, because that is the only way that you're really going to make it. If you're pursuing a craft or a trade, you need that reputation. You need to deliver for people, and there's no reason for them to take a risk with their reputation on you. So you have to come and you have to jump to the head of the line, because how else are you going to beat either someone established and credible, their vendor of choice, someone in their network, or their beloved? If they're going to give anybody a shot that has no experience, it's not going to be you. It's going to be their beloved niece or nephew with no experience. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
RKVC brought up a good point, saying we aim to make the client, project manager, whoever cuts the check, so happy with the results that they don't mind the invoice. So again, you just have to do the best thing that you can and always put your best foot forward. And eventually the numbers will align with the value that you are delivering.
Yeah.
And I think we can probably maybe call it a night for now, since we've been going for an hour and a half. But it's all right, because this was our first NARP, and we're happy that you guys were able to come and join us. For those of you who were live, and for those of you who are listening afterwards, or watching this replay on YouTube, obviously it really is kind of a treat to do this live. So if you can, tune in on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 8:30 p.m. Roberto Standard Time.
Nice. Well played, madam. Well played. Well played, madam. Roberto is late to everything. Roberto Standard Time. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, there were some things that happened visually, and there's obviously a visual component to this, so it's a lot more fun. So if you are free on Thursdays, come hang out and check out the live stream. We'll be linking to the YouTube channel so that you guys can subscribe and all that stuff from our personal Twitter accounts. And that is, why don't you kick it off, Audrey?
How am I supposed to end this?
You're supposed to say your Twitter account. I just gave you the lead in.
It's just at Audrey Ember. Yeah.
And I am at Roberto Blake in all of the socials. Thank you so much for joining us here on NARP, the No Assembly Required podcast for random people doing random things.
And I am at Red Romina all over the socials.
Mm-hmm.
And we are NARP everywhere. Wait.
And we are NARP.
We are NARP.
We are NARP.
Now we need We Are NARP merch, and now that's gonna be a thing. People, if you see us all hanging out, you guys have to say We Are NARP. And you have to do it with enthusiasm. We are NARP.
Say it like a Viking.
Like NARP.
NARP.
You have to say it like Pinky from the Brain, kind of, except like
except
like,
NARP.
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 Oh
NARP. NARP squad.
NARP squad.
NARP squad.
NARP squad.
We are NARP. We are many. Yes, indeed we are.
We are
indeed
NARP.
we are.
We are many.
All right, guys. So we're signing off. Thanks again for joining. Subscribe, follow, do all the things that gives us validation.
Give us
Because
a review. Isn't that what podcasters say?
oh, sure, yeah. Audrey, would you like to do the outro?
I don't know. That was it.
Like when we're in all the podcasting places, when we do all the things, leave us reviews and leave us 5 stars, or the dread pirate Roberts
Leave
will
us
come
1
for your
star.
souls.
Oh boy. Okay, it's getting to that hour of the night.
Yeah. Like no, that's a reference for like my 80s nerds, my like people from before Audrey's time.
Oh boy.
For my peoples.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we'll see all of y'all's next week. We need a better sign off.
Yeah.
NARP
we're
out.
definitely-
No.
Perfect.